Hi there, good afternoon. My name is Chris Lazo and I'm the Local Nature Partnerships Cymru Project Manager and I work for WCBA. Welcome to the Wales Biodiversity Partnership Conference and the Local Nature Partnerships Cymru Showcase, which is part of the Connecting Communities to Nature, Building Capacity in the Community session. So questions can be asked through the live chat and will be picked up by moderators if there's time. You're also welcome to ask questions in Welsh as these will be translated. Further details of all the presentations and the speakers' biographies can also be found on the WOVA webpage. So I encourage you to register for sessions and provide feedback by rating them. The sessions are being recorded and will be available afterwards through the WBP website. So we have a couple of presentations for you today. So first off will be myself talking about a year in the life of the LNP project. Then we'll have Trevor Theobald, ecologist at Pembrokeshire County Council, talking about the Pembrokeshire Biodiversity Partnership. Then we'll have two case studies, one presented by Lucy Arnold-Matthews, who's the LNP coordinator for Monmouth and Newport, and the Biodiversity Education Officer for Newport County Council. She'll be talking about the Barrack Hill project, which was funded through the Local Places for Nature grant. Then we'll have Revera, LNP Coordinator for Newport Talbot and RCT, talking about the green roof installed in Newport Talbot, which was also funded through the Local Places for Nature grant. And finally, we will have Adam Rowe, Manager from the South East Wales Biodiversity Record Centre, talking about the work between the LERCs and the LNP project. We hope you enjoy the sessions. Thank you. My name is Chris Lazo. I'm the project manager for LNP Cymru. I'm just going to do a presentation today to giving you a bit of an overview of the work that we're currently doing. So we call this presentation A Year in the Life of LNP Cymru, giving you a bit of a showcase of our history, what we're doing currently, and some of the partners involved as well. So LNP Cymru project is a Welsh Government funded collaboration between Wales Biodiversity Partnership, WCBA, local authorities, national park authorities, and the local environmental record centres, which aims to strengthen the number, resilience, and impact of local nature partnerships in Wales. So LNPs, hosted by local authorities, bring together cross-sector stakeholders to direct and deliver targeted conservation activities. They are successors to the local biodiversity action plan partnerships, which have had a history of over 20 years, and the project is building on these foundations and developing complete Wales-wide coverage. The LNP project maintains strong strategic and local links with National Resources Wales, facilitating knowledge exchange and aligning with policy developments, for example, area statements. NRW are also represented on the LNP Advisory Board and the Programme Board. So the project has provided dedicated LNP coordinators in those local authority and national park areas that require them. So that's 18 out of 25 areas, and provided capacity building support around engagement, volunteering, communications and impact measurements, strengthen existing and build new collaborations. Development of a national integrated impact framework for nature recovery and strategic oversight by a wider range of social, economic and cultural interests to facilitate new collaborations over the 3 years. So our goal is to cement a vibrant and effective and functional All Wales network of LNPs delivering compelling evidence-based narratives about the value of nature recovery and enabling more local actors from all sectors to participate in coordinated action and to recognise and enjoy the multiple benefits that it brings. So this infographic aims to demonstrate how the LNP project works. So the LNP coordinator role facilitates and coordinates the local nature partnership, is a source of nature expertise across the county, and is instrumental in facilitating work happening on the ground. At its heart, the LNP project is place-based, but is flexible in operating at site, ward, habitat connectivity level, local authority, joint local authority level, and all encapsulated in a Wales-wide nature network. So before the LNP project began in 2019, active nature partnership across Wales were vulnerable to funding cuts, and in some areas the local nature partnership was dormant. So this funding helped to bridge that gap, ensuring there was a partnership to serve every county across Wales. In most of these counties, you can now join your LNP, either as an active partner involved in the decision-making in your area, or by receiving regular updates from the partnership. So traditional members are organisations such as ENGOs and public sector authorities, but many LNPs have also businesses and private sector involved. Through the project, we hope to continue to reach out to businesses and non-traditional audiences in order to engage everyone in nature recovery. As the partnerships become more established, they're becoming central to biodiversity activity happening in the area. This graph shows how inquiries coming through to the LNP coordinators are increasing. So partners, businesses, authorities, and the public and individuals reach out to their LNP for many reasons, but inquiries tend to fall in three main categories. Specialist advice, so that could be a partner who is applying for funding and needs someone to read over their application, or link to national context and give it a strategic focus. Collaboration, in other words, to work together on a project or develop training. For awareness raising or networking, so that's promoting funding, projects or campaigns. Sometimes all it takes is for the LNP to link two people or partners together for a really great project to happen. While LNPs provide that coordination role, they also get involved with action on the ground, and as well as feeding into the national agenda and inputting into strategic development. One key area LNPs can support nature recovery is through conducting site visits. So many landowners and farmers reach out to LNPs for support, creating a management plan for biodiversity. So despite lockdown, LNPs have been able to continue to provide this support and ensure management plans take into account locally relevant biodiversity. So LNPs also do a fair bit of public engagement, attending or running events, visiting and working with schools. And this activity is really starting to ramp up as local partnerships become more and more embedded. The other crucial part of their role is strategic and local influencing. This can mean sitting on working groups, such as the National Nature Recovery Action Plan, or working groups for pollinator action plans or area statements. Ensuring nature recovery is high on the agenda is one of the main priorities of the LNP project. LNPs also support projects by providing specialist advice to those running the projects, so 89 projects so far, or giving out small grants to enable targeted local action, so 65 funded so far. The LNP project also successfully received just over £2 million of funding through Welsh Government's Local Places for Nature scheme, which funded multiple capital projects in every county to improve nature recovery. So the Local Places for Nature Fund is a Welsh Government capital fund that aims to deliver environmental growth on your doorstep. This includes community-led activity, attending to the everyday places. So these may include new projects for community orchards, allotments, greening of public buildings, tiny forests, water fountains, habitat creation, etc. So all projects need to restore and enhance nature. They need to deliver environmental growth where people live, work, or access public services. They need to be delivered within this financial year, 2021, and it needs to deliver a capital asset that has a sustainable management plan for future maintenance. It needs to also demonstrate multiple benefits spanning environmental, social, economic, and cultural well-being. So at the moment, we have 75 capital projects being delivered this year via the LNPs. And on the slide, you can see some of the outputs of this work. So 86 places for nature have been restored and enhanced. There's been 40 pollinator improvements, 27 new green corridors have been created, 20 meadows and verges with new mowing practices have also taken place. It's important to remember that we're able to deliver on these projects because of LNP capacity on the ground. So LNPs have also been successful in obtaining preparatory grants this year to enable early work to take place, which will enable efficient capital delivery in 21-22. Also, a smaller revenue pot has also been made available, which is there to add capacity for delivery within this year and planning of capital projects for next year. Now I'm going to focus on three specific LNPs to showcase what the project has achieved over the last year. So firstly, we'll look at Gwynedd, which is a relatively new partnership. So this is Ellis. So Ellis Smits is the LNP coordinator for Gwynedd. So he joined the team in January 2020, at which point there was no local nature partnership in place. So from no partnership and no members this time last year, the Gwynedd LNP now has 27 members. So it consists of traditional members such as the NGOs, but Ellis has also sought to engage local people and communities by involving town and community councils and housing associations. Ellis has also been working with Snowdonia LNP and Anglesey LNP on a North West Wales partnership, following the success of something similar in North East Wales, known as BioNet. So North West Wales come together monthly currently to share learning and ideas and develop projects together. So Ellis spent a lot of his first few months in the role meeting partners, and so the proactive role in the early stages has resulted in more and more partners reaching out to him, enabling him to step back and take more of a coordination role. So he's receiving inquiries from a variety of topics, from improving green infrastructure at local train stations to improving biodiversity solutions for sewage companies. He's then able to make activity happen on the ground by facilitating collaboration between partners. For example, linking ENGOs with community groups with funding bids, and research students with local action. A great example of his facilitation role is the Be Friendly initiative he is currently working on. So in his capacity as LNP coordinator, he is the Be Friendly champion for Gwynedd. So he has plans to get as many schools in Gwynedd as possible on the Be Friendly scheme by the end of the school year. So to do this, he has linked in with Theobald Partnership and North Wales Wildlife Trust to plant trees to replace those lost to ash dieback disease, create wildflower meadows and allotments, and to support the new environmental segment of the curriculum. Another example is the work he did with Incredible Edible in Porthmadog, who are working with numerous groups and organisations, including a school, Tesco's and a leisure centre to set up a habitat corridor. So Ellis provided advice and support as well as funding for bilingual interpretation, panels and benches for the community to relax and enjoy being in nature. He and the whole Gwynedd Biodiversity team also have great plans for the coming year, including working with the tourism industry in Gwynedd, running and taking part in a series of events leading up to the environmental festival Gwylf Medi in September 2021, and scaling up the Be Friendly project by greening the post-industrial towns of Gwynedd. So this slide focuses on the local places for nature capital works that Ellis and Gwynedd have been working on. So an example of this is the Gwynedd Habitat Recovery Project, which includes invasive non-native species removal, in this case Japanese knotweed, on the Barloyd River. Orchard creation and building works at Gwaith Podor, including bat and bird roosts, as seen in the picture, has now been made safe and cleared of asbestos, and also changing mowing practices on council land through meadow and pond creation. So Gwynedd was also successful in a preparatory grant funding application, which means they will receive funding to start some of the work necessary for the 21-22 funding application within this financial year. Through this, they will be funding a community toolkit for each administrative area of Gwynedd to enable communities to lease it for work on allotments, nature gardens and eco-school activities. This will support their 21-22 capital works programme, Greening the Post-Industrial Towns of Gwynedd, whereby they hope to receive funding to create more wildflower meadows, community allotments across the county to improve biodiversity and enable people to access nature on their doorstep. Not only has Ellis been instrumental in local action on the ground, but his role also involves local and strategic influencing. So this year he sat on the assessment panels for Keep Us Tidy, Local Places for Nature grant scheme, and advised on heritage lottery bid applications. So this ensures that any local action that's successful in receiving funding in Gwynedd meets both local and national biodiversity priorities. He's also used his role to sit on other boards and influence their priorities. For example, he's a member of the Dyffryn Gwyth Partnership, which is the flood management of the Ogwen Valley, and the EcoBro Foundation, a community group working on practical steps in the areas of local food and local transport. He sits on the steering group of Incredible Edible Porthmadog and is on the board of the Pwllheli Rotary Club. He's also recently delivered a workshop and sat on the panel of Peace Jam, which is a conference for young people to inspire them to change the world, spreading the LNP message to young people across Europe. This capacity to get involved in projects, to facilitate vital connections between people and partners, and to shape the steer of organisations throughout the county is crucial to the LNP project. Ellis's role has been recognised as so important within the council that they have funded an additional 2 days per week, enabling him to work full-time on the LNP. This is in less than a year of him starting his role. Now here's an example of an LNP which existed before the LNP Cymru project as a mechanism for area networking, but did not have capacity of funding to develop and deliver projects, which it does now. So this is about Blaenau Gwent and Torfaen LNP, which merged into one in 2017. So V is the LNP coordinator for Blaenau Gwent and Torfaen. She's worked in the third and public sector for over 20 years, developing and delivering projects which connect people to nature. As well as experience of nature conservation, she's developed expertise in the benefits of contact with nature for human health and well-being, which is the focus of a PhD she's currently working on through Cardiff University. V is delivering the last session here at the conference on Friday, looking at personal resilience for environmental practitioners, so be sure to check that out. So V joined the LNP team in March 2020, but she was a member of Torfaen LNP for 12 years prior. Membership now stands at around 75 members, with around 30 coming together for decision making. Those members include the usual players and locally important figures, as well as community councils and housing associations. Since starting, V has particularly been sought after for specialist advice. So this has been support with funding applications or guidance on developing wildlife projects. Members of the public and of community groups have also been able to reach out to V with issues concerning them around mistreatment of wildlife. So V is also working on a hedgehog project after a concerned member of the public got in touch to discuss how they can work together to raise awareness across the borough. So previously, this member of the public had tried social landlords and been passed around departments within the council. So V's role is crucial here as she ensures things get done and issues get sorted, either through the LNP or by linking people, partners or projects together. So due to the nature of her background and experience, V's role also has been important to get volunteering opportunities off the ground. She's able to link community groups with council staff so they can work together on conservation projects. Through the LNP, V has given out project funding to various partners in order to support them to carry out local action on the ground. In these past few months, she has funded projects for enhancement of meadows, woodland, wildflower verges, hedgerows and wetland sites. In the picture, the Pontypool Park Friends were removing litter, leaves and silt from the deer pond. This helped the local biodiversity and they were able to see immediate results as ducks had moved in by the very next day. Within Local Places for Nature, Blaenau Gwent and Torfaen received funding for 4 projects this year, which covered verges, hedging and walling, managing meadows, and wilding Torfaen, which included areas of low biodiversity value managed for wildlife, including tree planting, wetland creation, increased wildflowers, overall contributing to networks of habitat across the county borough and reducing fragmentation. So their preparatory grant will fund work which will be completed this year in order to prepare the ground for the 21-22 funding application. So in Blaenau Gwent and Torfaen, this will be funding tablets, training and updated GIS layers to build on this year's grassland work. The mapping software will enable them to create management plans for sites so the teams can look at them whilst on site and know which areas to cut at what time. By making cut and collect more effective and efficient, they're then hoping to roll it out to more sites next year. One of the big achievements of Blaenau Gwent and Torfaen's LNP this year was the creation of a working group within the council to focus on changing grassland management practices. Members of the biodiversity team had been trying to set this group up for years, but with V in place to coordinate this effort, as well as the funding and machinery brought through Local Places for Nature, this provided the crucial link to get staff across the council on board. So operational staff chose the machinery which they felt best suited the various landscapes they work in. They were able to demonstrate the equipment before committing. This ensured buy-in for the working group and behaviour change in terms of managing the land for biodiversity. Changing management practices within the council has had a knock-on effect within the community, as now other businesses and community councils are coming forward to inquire about cut and collect on their land. V is currently involved in a project with a community council to turn a former play area to annual cut and collect meadow. And they have also asked if they can have more wildflower verges in their patch. V has also been working to develop local nature champions who will recruit volunteers, provide training and provide skills development to support practical conservation in communities. Once COVID restrictions ease, it is hoped that there will be a great way to coordinate and maximise the volunteer effort for nature conservation across the 2 counties. So now we come to an example of a long-standing partnership which existed well before the LNP project began, so 20 years this October. And using Pembrokeshire as an example, I'm hoping to show how the LNP has added value where partnerships already existed. So Ant Rogers has been the Pembrokeshire Nature Partnership Officer for 8 years and counting. So PMP membership currently stands at 21 and includes a wide range of actors, from traditional members such as Buglife, National Trust, to the tourism industry, country land and business associations. There's over 800 on the mailing lists to be kept updated with partnership information and activity. So being established in this role means that he has lots of experience, knowledge and connections to continue to push for higher recognition of biodiversity and nature recovery. Locally, he sits on working groups for Pembrokeshire Council Local Development Plan and the National Park Recreational Management Plan. He's the Bee Friendly Champion for Pembrokeshire and sits on the Keep Wales Tidy Assessment Panel for West Wales. He's also in the Pembrokeshire Sustainable Agriculture Network and part of the Pembrokeshire Wildfire Group. Nationally, he's part of the Action Plan for Pollinators Task Force. He sits on the PSB Climate Change Risk Assessment Group, the Welsh Government NRAP Refresh Group and NRAP Ecosystem Resilience Working Group. He's also on the Project Board and Advisory Board of the LNP project. The most important way in which the LNP project has been of benefit in Pembrokeshire is giving the partnership 3 years of security regarding funding. So despite celebrating its 20th anniversary this year, prior to this project, much of ANT's time was spent fighting the corner for next year's funding. Another one of the most important ways in which the LNP project has been of benefit in Pembrokeshire is by enabling the partnership to develop deeper collaborations with partners. With access to a small pot of money, the partnerships can leverage joint funding and resources to secure integrated outcomes for people and nature. So here is an overview of all the projects Pembrokeshire LNP funded last year. 17 projects, grants of just under 20,000, bringing in almost double that figure in match funding. Just not large sums of money, but really quick wins for biodiversity and nature recovery. It demonstrates flexible funding with a quick turnaround. So looking at some of these projects in a little bit more detail, you have, for example, the brown hair streak monitoring. So that's paying for volunteer mileage, which enabled 350 hours work of monitoring this threatened species. It's very labour intensive, but the data wouldn't exist without the volunteers, as there's no national monitoring programme. This then informs the action plan to protect the species. Then you have the Wildlife Trust South and West Wales. So that was fencing to enable conservation grazing, an example of classic habitat management with a key partner. Stitch in Time. So this was about area clearance to allow volunteers to spend 80 hours pulling Himalayan balsam, so around 20,000 small plants, and it would not have been possible without the area having been cleared first. The Coastal Education Pack, which was paying for translation costs of this pack, used to promote engagement and care of the coastal margins. It's particularly used in schools and as part of the curriculum. Plant Pembrokeshire, which paid for 1,300 trees and guards for a plant scheme. So it was planting a tree for every child born in Pembrokeshire each year until a thriving woodland is created. So low cost but huge value, and connected two important habitats and will prevent future flooding and reduce soil loss. The project demonstrated strong partnership working between LNP, T-Coid Charity, local farm business, NHS Health Board, and acted as a catalyst for further change. The new woodland will be promoted as a place for new parents and families to visit, and NHS staff will engage new parents in discussions around sustainable parenting. There's a similar picture for 2021 so far, so just short of 10,000 in project funds given out. But if the opportunity for more comes around, there is a bank of projects which could be funded quite quickly. This shows strong partnership working in the area. So far, Pembrokeshire has already brought in over 6,000 in match funding, and that's before the work has been carried out. So some of these examples, I believe, demonstrate flexibility of funding. The Wolf Castle tree planting is a plant scheme just mentioned. So volunteers were supposed to come in and do aftercare on the newly planted trees, but due to COVID restrictions, this could not happen. So the funding pot allowed that these trees, they could be protected by paying a contractor to spray weeds to protect them. It was not ideal, but it ended up protecting the asset. Open water enhancement, so this money paid to defilter ponds and recreate a key habitat in the beautiful nature reserve of Llangollen and Fen. The marsh fritillaries is similar to the brown hair streak monitoring previously mentioned, so paid for a desk-based study to give strategic direction and management plan for marsh fritillaries going forward. On top of the project pot, which the LNP can give out in grants, the LNP officer is also able to offer advice and support to development and delivery of project partners and projects. So some of the projects that ANT has been supporting this year has been the Newport Environment and Action Group. So ANT has been supporting the group to submit an application to the National Park Sustainable Development Fund to fund local actions such as tree planting. Growing Better Connections, so this is a landscape regeneration project in northeast Pembrokeshire, focusing on ecological connectivity and resilience. So ANT previously supported an SMS bid to employ project officers and a manager, which was successful, and he continues to advise them now and often facilitate collaborations between the group and key stakeholders. So the picture shown is from an apple juicing day run by the group. It's building resilience in catchments. So ANT is on the steering group and working group. Welsh Government feasibility studies into nutrient trading and plans to reduce polluters. And Bug Farms is a private company which promotes dung beetles and invertebrate engagement. So ANT supported the creation of an edible 3-acre field to showcase nature-friendly farming and support beeline and pollinator-friendly schemes. So off the back of that, the Bug Farm and LNP worked together to write a successful capital funding bid to look at marsh fritillary management. So LNP has the capacity and resource to support this kind of journey. Through Local Places for Nature, Pembrokeshire received funding for capital projects. This was both for the local authority and National Park Authority. Things like Pembroke Mill Pond, so that was increasing the biodiversity of the mill pond through green management. Green team, so this was purchasing a lockable trailer with tools and equipment for a new green team of volunteers. County Hall wilding, replacing 200 metres squared of sterile grassland around the country hall with wildflower turf. Parade woodland improvements. Riverside pocket parks, that was about creating a pocket park, so there's this area is alongside the main car park to improve otter cover through sensitive clearance. Creation of woodland and INNS free assets, so buying a quad and mower to manage a key wetland habitat on the floodplain of the old mill grounds. Haverfordwest Castle Passage. So the Castle Passage is currently a main link from the Castle car park to Haverfordwest High Street. And the idea is to have the area behind the passage landscaped with native species and the wall to be lowered to allow views of the castle behind. And also the Haverfordwest Pollinators project. So these are various activities, including installation of Swifton House Martin boxes on council buildings. And as mentioned, Pembrokeshire National Park Authority also has a number of projects under Local Places for Nature. So these include the fritillaries at Trevor, Lower Meadow enhancement at Castle Henless, Coiber Bay invasives, that's around removing Himalayan balsam impacting on the Wales coast path at Coiber Bay. Heritage orchards, so 60 young fruit trees grafted from heritage orchards and upskilling both National Park volunteers and MenCap volunteers at Stackpole walled gardens and the techniques associated with the grafting of fruit trees. And Manabia Meadows, which is restoring 0.25 acres or hectares, of wildflower meadow at Manabia, which is in poor condition due to its small size and awkward slope, using a mini flail mower. So I hope that this presentation has given you an example of how different LNPs operate, how they adapt to the context of their community and their landscape and the skills and knowledge of the coordinator. We believe that together it makes for a well-rounded network. Our future plans include wanting to increase our work in supporting partners, especially including community groups and volunteers. An interactive project map to allow easy navigation of work being delivered across Wales by each LNP is also being worked on. We are further planning for more Pan-Wales capital projects for next year, and we're working on increasing the variety of partners within each LNP. So there is a local nature partnership in every area across Wales, each uniquely placed to take action for nature at the local level. Your local nature partnership is a one-stop shop for nature expertise, nature projects and activities taking place in your area. There are lots of ways you can get involved and give nature a helping hand, from joining the conversation online to becoming a member of your LNP. We have regular fortnightly LNP meetings, so if you would like to link in with our work, we would gladly offer you an opportunity to do so via this platform. Also, please visit our website, lnp.cymru, for more information, and you can also find us on Twitter at lnp.cymru. We would love to hear from you. The Local Nature Partnership Network in Wales is uniquely positioned to be an integral part of a green recovery. It is a multi-partner network of capacity, knowledge, training, public engagement, volunteering activities, collaboration, and practical action for nature. The activities and actions LNPs facilitate, enable, and undertake for species and habitats take place collaboratively. In addition, citizen outreach through volunteering, nature events, and wildlife recording have been a significant element of LNP activities. We would like to see a Wales-wide network of local nature partnerships with nature recovery expertise in every local authority and national park, to build a sustainable nature recovery network in Wales with the full participation of civil society. Thank you very much for your time.
Well, welcome to what will be a canter through the last 20 years of the Pembrokeshire Biodiversity Partnership, now renamed the Pembrokeshire Nature Partnership. I became involved in 1999 and we were able to launch our LBAP in October 2000, the first in Wales to be launched. We soon realized that there was a lot to do, and we were able to employ Bethan Cox here as the Biodiversity Implementation Officer here in Haverfordwest Farmers Market, distributing leaflets for Wales Biodiversity Week. Along with Sea Trust, Bethan and myself did some Sea Watch activities here at Strumble Head, and on the occasion when I wasn't there, Bethan and others were very lucky to see humpback whale go past Strumble Head. The implementation of the LBAP obviously had specific projects that were thrown up to enable us to understand how the species and habitats were doing. One very successful project was the otter survey, where we had the help of Jeff Lyles and the Wildlife Trust and various other organisations to train up science folk to help us understand where otters were moving through the catchments. We also realised that kestrels were not having a particularly good time of it, so we had a system of putting up monitoring boxes to enable us to help the kestrels. 2007 and 2008, I was asked to help deliver the Biodiversity Duty course at Plas Tanabulch to show how Pembrokeshire had been instigating its partnership approach and how we were then implementing the ELB. Communication is absolutely key, and we started a partnership newsletter which still continues today, along with a web presence, and now we have Facebook pages as well. We started to realise that some species were declining, and green woodpecker was one in particular, and quite a common bird 30 odd years ago in the county, now lost as a breeding bird, and very, very infrequent records. But where there are losers, there are winners, and we were soon looking to spot harlequin ladybirds. 2008 was again the first record in Pembroke. The partnership supported, among others, the Pembrokeshire Fungus Recording Network, who were particularly interested in grassland fungi, and here's Bethan and myself looking at some wax caps in a cemetery. But it was quite interesting that the pink ballerina wax cap was on the original 90s UK BAP list, and when people started looking for it, they started finding it. So the importance of records and recording is paramount, without a doubt. But we soon found, or UK-wide found, that these were a lot more common than they first thought of. So they were actually then removed from the UK list and the Welsh list. To help aid awareness and interest in grassland fungi, the production of this booklet was aided by the Biodiversity Partnership and has proved very successful since then, and it's gone through, I think, about 4 editions so far. In 2009, again, we were supported to bring across to the UK one of Europe's wax cap experts, Yves Arnold. He's the one with the beard, just in case you didn't know. I think Jane is there looking at a magic mushroom, actually as part of the grassland assemblage. But he was able to give us the raft of his experience in understanding a little bit more about the needs of wax caps in the county. Notwithstanding our importation of experts, we obviously used and were able and lucky enough to draw on the Welsh expertise. So here we have Ray Woods talking about the Lobarian communities of lichens in Stackpole National Nature Reserve. And here's one of the species there, lungwort, Lobaria pulmonaria. So from the sublime to the ridiculous, here's Bethan Cox in front foreground left, forcing me into a puddle, whilst we are undertaking a Wildlife on Your Patch survey with a local community, in fact my local community. And the idea of this Wildlife on Your Patch was to enthuse peoples and locals about what was important in terms of the natural history in their area. And in fact, there is a bit of logic to this standing in the puddle lark. This particular tractor rut had three-lobed water crowfoot in it, so I was doing a bit of squelchy management to try and aid its continuance. A report was then done. We did about 30 different communities or villages with associated areas, and they're all still reports that are available to the communities. During that process, the search for species at different times of the year then resulted in brown-banded carnaby being the purple dot in the middle of the Pembrokeshire map there. That was my garden, and so I was lucky enough to do that. But we'd been working quite with Sinead Lynch from Bumblebee Conservation Trust, again delivering citizen science projects, and obviously from Sinead's point of view, signing up Bumblebee surveyors. This one's at Scolton Manor. As part of that process, I was able to influence a little bit on the planting schemes within the council, and so we had areas of what would have been formal planting dedicated over to pollinator plantings. Here there's an excellent crop of California poppies, not natives I know, but they are excellent for pollinators along with other cornflowers and mallows. We undertook a state of wildlife to see how wildlife was doing in 2011. So it wasn't a particularly great picture, but then a lot of species are quite difficult to get a handle on in terms of their absolute ability to do well in the county. But one very interesting species, I think a very charismatic species, that we were asked to go and look at. We were contacted by Kew, who had some old records of willow blister, Cryptomyces maximus, for the Dowrog Common, and we were asked to go and see if we could find it again. Not only did we find it at the Dowrog, but we found 8 other places in the county where we were able to find it, and it was then listed actually as part of the process under the IUCN World's 100 Rarest Things in the World. And at that time, Pembrokeshire had 9 out of the 10 sites known in the world. So by 2014, Ant Rogers, who I'm sure most of you will know, had taken up the post of Biodiversity Implementation Officer. And I really put this slide in to show the breadth of the projects that at that stage the partnership has been involved with. So from a county-wide or mid-Pembrokeshire rural revitalisation project to involvement with the local records centre, the Square Challenge, which was to try and get people to go and look out for records within a 1 kilometre square where there were no records, the Crawfish Survey, the wax caps, local nature walks, brown hair streaks, invasives, and with the National Park heathland management. We were also then contacted by Kew about another quite interesting species. John Hudson managed to find a site in Pembrokeshire for hazel gloves, and so we set about looking for them, and that's what the beast is. It is a hyperparasite, so it feeds on another fungus, hazel glue or glue fungus, which is fairly widespread. You can find it in most woodland areas, woodland edge where there's hazel. So do keep an eye out. If you find the glue, keep going back and having a look around, see whether you might be lucky enough to find some hazel glove. So the red dots were up to the 2019 sites that we were able to find, and the 3 orange ones are ones that I'd found this year. So added to the database of 3 new sites. 2014 also saw Pembrokeshire hit the news headlines when there was a weather event that caused a bus to be swamped with a wave and pushed all the shingle from Newgale Beach and shattered a lot of the windows and caused a little bit of damage both to the bus and to some of the occupants. Nobody was seriously hurt. But increasing weather events are of interest to the natural world and play an important part in changes to biodiversity. Not least of all, my son here, who's 6'4", is pointing out the loss of sand from Newgale Beach following the storm. So there was well over 3 foot of sand had disappeared. You can see from the bare rock there where it hasn't been colonized by barnacles, limpets and other crustaceans. So that was bare rock where the sand had disappeared from. Put this slide in to remind me that geodiversity is part of biodiversity, so we mustn't forget the rocks and the fossils and stuff. These are graptolites. One of the main places for them in Pembrokeshire is Aberystwyth in the Blue Lagoon in the quarry there. Purple broom rape made an appearance also in the summer, a Mediterranean summer of 2014, and this is a species that is partly parasitic on yarrow, and this is a bit of an amenity grassland that it last flowered about 30 years ago, well 30 years from 2014 anyway, and then for 2 years running it decided to pop up 2014 and 15, but we can see from its UK distribution map that it's quite an unusual plant. And so is this a harbinger of more activity for Mediterranean species as our climate warms? Well, who can tell? We need to keep recording, keep our local record centre well stocked with records. Invasive non-native species, along with the 3 marine SACs that Pembrokeshire is involved with and the Marine Conservation Society, we put on a invasive species course for the marine environment. That year as well, the partnership were involved in the production of this report, which was produced in 2015 on the Castlemartin Peninsula. So we were looking at how the partners could get together, look at landscape scale projects, and they, along with the local record centre, we developed a trial mapping system as a planning tool, and that's since developed into the land use planning tool that I know several areas in Wales and so several local record centres now promote as a really good tool for professionals to be able to use. Encouraging awareness of issues to our members of Parliament and Welsh Assembly members and those in areas of power. Here we have the Pembrokeshire Marine SAC and the SEWBReC Marine Conservation Zone boat out with some worthies to highlight the issues. SCOMA and SCOCOM and Ramsey Grassholm are very, very important for seabirds. SCOMA in particular, with its population of Manx shearwaters, SCOMA and SCOCOM combined. But on SCOMA there had been some really interesting developments with the aid of technology. So we have data loggers, or sorry, should I say universities have been putting on data loggers. So the Edward Grey in Oxford, Sheffield, Gloucester, Plymouth have all been doing data logging experiments with as technology has allowed. But the fascinating thing here is that a Manx shearwater travelled 7,750 kilometres in 6.5 days. And this was just unknown before we had this technology for using data log. So 2016, we did an update of the state of wildlife in Pembrokeshire. Still not a fabulous picture, still a lot of stuff that needs to be considered and more work to be done. We were also, as a partnership, able to support the PEMS Fungus Recording Network to trial a citizen science-based development of a thing called Bento Lab to look at DNA. So the fungus recording were one of 10 citizen science and or educational establishments in the world that was supported to do this initial trial with the Bento Lab, and we were able to set up close links with Gareth Griffith in Aberystwyth University. So we do some of the first stages of the DNA process and then pay Aberystwyth University to do the final bit. So we concentrated on a particular species, the Hygrocybe conica, the blackening waxcap, and of the sites that we were able to find in that year, the blackening waxcap sites that had previously been shown to be one species, we were able through DNA work to find out that we actually had 4 different species. The green dot in the middle there is this one, which is in my garden. Rather magnificent beast. So 2018, we launched the Nature Recovery Action Plan for Pembrokeshire. Again, working on the partnership approaches. Here's Ant delivering some of the stuff for the Wales Biodiversity Partnership in September 2018. I'm sure a lot of you will know Anthro is working with the Wales Biodiversity Partnership as well as the sterling work that he does for PEMS. So just recently there's been a lot hitting the headlines. Here we have David Attenborough, and in October on the front of the Radio Times saying, how do we save the planet? It's not about saving the planet, it's about saving ourselves. So very much a case of understanding the ecology and the biodiversity and how we are all interlinked. The COVID process has certainly, I think, made more people aware of the importance of their environment around them, their local areas. So I mentioned before about recording, the fact that the local Environmental Record Centre app is available. Ours is the SEWBReC. So get out there and get recording, send your record in. So a couple of quick records for my lockdown. I was able to find date waxcap this year, which was a very nice find. Haven't seen one of those before. I'd had a glorious privet hawk moth in the garden. Again, only one other record I've had of privet. They say insanity is hereditary, you get it from your children, but I think the reverse is probably true for my 2 boys who caught the bug, and so here they are looking at otter spraints under a bridge, and our walks always generally end up with some foraging around looking for signs of something or another. So what next? Might we have stork? Who knows? Our certain challenge is to protect and enhance the biodiversity of Pembrokeshire. There are a lot of pressures on all organisations to maintain their responsibilities, but it is our duty wherever possible to get out there and make sure that the growth is there for our children. Sometimes the wildlife is all around us and it's sometimes not so easy to see, but we just need to be out there and looking. Last slide is to encourage people to keep records. I keep a sketchbook diary, which aids me in filling in my reports to send the records in. So get out there, enjoy it, record it, and send your records in. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lucy. I'm the Support Local Nature Partnership Coordinator for Monmouthshire and Newport Local Nature Partnership, and I'm also the Biodiversity Education Officer for Newport City Council. Earlier on this year, we were awarded a Green in the Public Estate Local Places for Nature grant for a project here at Barrack Hill. Let me show you around. The green space here at Barrack Hill is a large mosaic of semi-improved wet and dry natural grassland, scrub, bracken and woodland. It sits between the wards of Ulterine and Shaftesbury and neighbours a large housing estate which is managed by a housing association. The estate suffers with large amounts of antisocial behaviour and fly tipping and is placed in amongst the 10% most deprived areas in Wales. The woodland is a hotspot for fly tipping, predominantly from neighbouring properties that share the boundary. The culture of fly tipping is well embedded, and although attempts have been made to clean up this site in years gone by, it has only made a small dent in what can only be described as a big issue. Together, with local residents, we thought there was scope for a project to take a more holistic approach, giving the opportunity for local people to get involved and, importantly, giving nature the time to recover, and that is exactly what this funding is enabling us to do. The project has been the catalyst to formulate a multi-agency action group bringing together key stakeholders to deal with some of the wider issues that affect the community and how they engage with nature. Organisations such as Newport City Council, Natural Resources Wales, Fly Tip Action Wales, Pobble Housing Association, the local Biodiversity Partnership and local residents all working together with a shared goal to create and provide access to quality green spaces that support nature recovery.
Hi, my name's Harry. I work for Natural Resources Wales and I work with the Newport Public Services Board, so closely with the council as well. So my role is Green and Safe Spaces Engagement Officer. So my role in the Barracks Wood project has been to coordinate and get key people around the table, just to take a multi-agency approach to the projects. So projects like this would really help people sort of reconnect with nature, and be able to use the space, which is right on their doorstep. So if it's if it's improved, an improved space, hopefully more and more people will use it and realise the benefits of it as well.
The site has public rights of way running through, providing essential links for the community to local shops and amenities. Used daily by residents, it is also a walk-in route to the local primary school. There is also a small recreational and play area. Feedback from residents suggests that they do not feel safe enough in this area to utilise the wider green space as a place for nature on their doorstep, due to the overwhelming amount of fly tip in the woodland and the perceived threat of being isolated, partly due to lack of access. The installation of a footpath here is key to improving accessibility. It also leads people into wanting to explore this green space a little further, whilst also providing us with an access route to carry out further conservation management tasks to an area that we were unable to access previously. Like, for example, this space here that we've managed to open up and clear the encroaching bracken, and will now be able to manage in a way that enables wild flora and fauna to re-establish, providing much needed habitat for pollinators. This pathway will also be the location of one of our proposed interpretation boards, giving information of the types of habitat and wildlife that can be found here. Through the removal of fly tipping and increased active conservation management, the project will enhance the area's ability to support nature recovery. To date, we have removed 3 lorry loads of rubbish. These hoglets were found nestled in amongst plastic bags, empty crisp packets and rusty beer cans that had all been fly tipped. They were rescued soon after by the local hedgehog rescue. Another reminder of why projects like this are so vital in supporting nature recovery. Moving forward with this project, as lockdown restrictions are lifted and with safety measures in place, we hope to plan volunteer activities such as tree thinning, planting, building and erecting bat and bird boxes. These activities are not only key to supporting the recovery of nature by providing and enhancing vital habitat, they are also key engagement tools that we can use to provide local people with valuable opportunities to engage with quality green space, which in turn will contribute to improving and supporting health and well-being, leading to a positive and responsible use by the community. Thanks for watching the presentation so far. The last clip I'm going to show you is a message from a lady called Julia, who is a resident and a volunteer within the Barrack Hill project. I think this is probably the most important clip of the whole presentation. Thanks for watching, I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll be happy to answer any questions afterwards.
Hi, my name's Julia. I'm a volunteer in the area where we are now, which is Barrack Hill / Barrackswood. There's been a project going on here for the last couple of weeks involving the council and the local biodiversity officer, Lucy. Just a quick thing to let you know why projects like this are so important. With the community that surrounds it, it gives people like me, volunteers, an opportunity to get the children involved and let them know exactly what nature is around them. By opening up places that have become overgrown, it then enables us to come in with the children and add things that will both benefit them in learning and the nature around us, i.e. bird and bat boxes, wildflower seeds, different species of trees and different things. So projects like this are really a necessity in areas where communities can get involved with volunteers and children and help with the learning to carry it on for years to come. Thank you for listening, and carry on with the funding. It all helps. Thanks. Bye.
Hi, my name is Rose. I'm Local Nature Partnership Coordinator for Newport Talbot and Rhondda and Taff. I'm here today in Gladys Country Park, which is in Newport Talbot, to have a look at our new biodiverse green roofs on these storage containers.
So Newport Talbot Council Countryside and Wildlife team had some money from Welsh Government through the Local Places for Nature Fund, which came in through the LNP Cymru project, to help us build these green roofs.
Green roofs are a way of improving a building for nature. They store water so that there's less runoff when there's high rainfall. They improve the look of the building. They can improve air quality. They can improve, lessen the effects of sort of urban heat island. And essentially, they're great habitats for wildlife in the local area. Really good for pollinators and for everything that is then in the food chain. So these particular green roofs are built on storage containers, and the load bearing on a storage container is on the corners and the edges generally. So these have got a frame which spreads that weight and puts it onto the load bearing part of the container. You can see it's got gabions around the edges, which is to allow free draining. And the aim eventually we will get some wooden guttering fitted onto these, which will lead into a storage tank, and that will give the volunteers here, Friends of Gladys, they'll have a sustainable source of water to water the green roof in case of drought conditions. The substrate on the roofs is about 12 centimetres deep, so that is going to allow us to plant some native species on here, and they should be able to establish and thrive. And that's what Celtic Wildflowers are doing here today. So they're here planting a multitude of different species, which Barry will tell us all about now.
Okay, so we got a truckload of plants here for the roof. I just bring them out. So some of these have been grown as plug plants, other of them are pot plants. These are 9cm pots. These are our standard plug plants. So these have already been pre-popped out of the trays. So these are betony, for example. This is musk mallow. I'll just pull these out. Wild marjoram, obviously a really nice pollinator species, pollinator friendly species. We've also got a little bit of wild licorice, which is a bit of a Newport Talbot speciality, known only from Newport Talbot in Wales. We've got a little bit of wild onion in the bottom there. Some nice plants of field scabious, which are super pollinator friendly. This is Linum bienni, which is a nice, again, it's a bit of a speciality from Newport Talbot. There's very good numbers. There's a lot of stuff in here. These are small scabious plugs. So these are fantastic for pollinators. Once these get going in the by midsummer, they just keep on going into autumn, and it's probably the most important species for a number of bee species. Birds for trefoil, lots and lots of species like that, not just as a pollinator plant but also for a larval host species.
Another feature of the fact that these are storage containers, they need to remain movable, is that these particular green roofs are designed to be able to be detached and lifted off using a crane or some sort of large machinery, but that means that the movable nature of the container isn't affected. There's plenty of sort of green roof consultants that can help you design something like this up if it's because it can be a bit overwhelming looking at a building and seeing where you'll go from there. So there's two green roofs on two different storage containers here. They cost just under 10,000, so it's a cost of approximately £250 per metre square.
In the first year after planting, Celtic Wildflowers are going to be coming back to weed, assess the planting, check everything's going well with the green roofs. And then in following years, the volunteers and the ranger for Craig Gladys will be maintaining the roof. So they'll be cutting the flowers at the end of the flowering season and raking them off to keep the nutrients low. And that should encourage the wildflowers to keep coming back year on year.
We are still looking for other sites to put green roofs out in Newport Talbot. We hope that we'll be able to fit plenty more. So if you know of a building or a structure that could be suitable for a green roof, then please do get in touch and let us know.
Hello. You may have seen in the chat there that we are too short on time to show the videos, so I'm going to go straight into my presentation, which was the only live one on this little segment. So I'm just going to very briefly cap off by talking about the local nature partnerships, Cymru, and how the local environmental record centres are working with the project. So I'm Rowe from SEWBReC, one of the 4 local record centres in Wales. I talked about the lurks yesterday, so I'm not going to go into that in any detail now, other than to say there they are. There are 4 of us, and we work very closely together under this umbrella organisation, Local Environmental Record Centres Wales. And as LNP Cymru is a national project, it's Lurk Wales, which is the partner in that project itself, with the 4 lurks delivering the local projects. When putting together the initial LNP Cymru project bid, we put together a Lurk Wales offer, which outlines some of the strands of work which we wanted to do to engage with the local nature partnerships and the coordinators. So I'm going to go through those in a little less detail than I'd originally planned. Lurks have the job of engaging with their local nature partnerships, and this it means we have traditionally been spread very thin. In the South East Wales region where I'm based, we now have 10 LMPs. We used to have 12 local biodiversity partnerships, but it does mean we're spread too thin to fully engage with those partnerships until now, when the funding through the LMP Cymru project has allowed us to sort of attend more meetings and get stuck in. And providing data and services is one of the main things that we want to do as sort of new work through this project. And so we've put together a little suite of products which we can provide the local nature partnerships, including priority species audits of Section 7 species, working with local species experts to identify local priority species lists, which can then be taken into account in the new local nature recovery action plans, and data gap analysis. This is a quick example, which I don't expect you to be able to read, of a Section 7 species audit, and this one was undertaken for the LNPs in Gwent through the separate Greater Gwent, Resilient Greater Gwent project, but we're hoping to complete these audits for the rest of South Wales, and they've already been done for West Wales. Whizzing through. Providing training in recording and species identification is a big part of what local record centres do, and each year we'll have a series of presentations on introducing recording and species identification in each of the LERCs. We did start the programme of face-to-face training for the LNPs, but then of course COVID came along. You'll notice the one and only event we did in South East Wales was on the 13th of March, which was pretty much most people's last working day before we went into work from home and lockdown. So COVID forced everything onto Zoom, and since the summer we've been providing introduction to wildlife recording sessions online via Zoom, and we're shortly providing those for individual LNPs as well. I mentioned Wales Garden BioBlitz in the Lurk slot yesterday, so I won't go into that again now, but suffice to say it was the most prolific day of wildlife recording ever, and that was a key part of Wales Nature Week, and it was our time in that was funded through the LNP Cymru project. Just finishing off my very brief slot now, so talking of the 4 evidence-driven regional pilot projects which we Lurks have offered to the LNP Cymru project. And there are 4 across Wales over the 3 years of the LNP Cymru project. So year 1, this was a further development of the tool that Trevor just mentioned in his video by West Wales Biodiversity Information Centre. So they've produced an online web mapping tool for the whole of the West Wales region now, which allows partners to access simple information on key species, habitat data, and then habitat suitability maps and overall biodiversity value maps, and these can all be contextualized with land ownership and designation layers. So just to show one quick example, this is the otter habitat suitability layer, which which shows red areas being the most suitable for otters, going down to dark blue for less suitable habitat. And what you can see on the left are all the different layers that are included in this West Wales land use planning tool, including flood risk, which was a new addition for the region-wide tool. I should make it clear it was originally developed for Pembrokeshire only and has been expanded to the whole of the West Wales region through this LNP Cymru project. The second project is in my patch in SEWBReC, where we're working with Swansea Local Partnership on a project called Making Sense of Ecosystem Resilience at the local level. And as you'll know, all the public authority partners in LNPs have a duty under the Environment Act to maintain and enhance biodiversity and the resilience of ecosystems. But we identified the fact that it was difficult at the local level to make sense of that ecosystem resilience, so we decided to try and produce local maps to inform conservation decision making and then ultimately nature recovery. This is just a quick snapshot of a project area that we're looking at just to the northwest of Swansea, and you'll see the national curve data, as it's known, maps ecosystem resilience to 1 kilometre square, which is very good at the national level, but it doesn't provide enough detail to inform local decisions. And so what we're currently in the midst of working on is getting down to a finer scale and using the data that's held at the Lurks to map species diversity and all the other attributes of ecosystem resilience, as in diversity, extent, condition and connectivity. So there's using the SEWBReC data to identify areas of species diversity, high species diversity, and then semi-natural habitat diversity, and these will be layered with data on site condition and connectivity to produce overall ecosystem resilience maps. Just very briefly finishing off, 2 more projects to come, one in BIS working with, one in Paris working with Biodiversity Information Service, the Paris LNP looking at developing a suite of local priority species lists, and then Cofnod in North Wales will be working with BioNet in North East Wales, the LNP in North East Wales, to build on some of the work that's been done in West Wales looking at habitat suitability mapping. And just to summarise, our participation in the LNP Cymru project has allowed us to forge closer working relationships between LERCs and LNPs, and allowing the LNPs to make more use of the expertise and data in the LERCs. It's enabled us to work with communities to help them become better equipped with the skills required to record wildlife, to turn their sightings into records, and to contribute to the evidence base. And then ultimately to ensure that LNP actions and priorities are well informed and evidence driven, so that their nature recovery plans are well informed. That's me done, very quick, and I hope we now might have a few seconds for Q&A. If anybody else is joining, Adam could promote any other speakers. Do we have time?
Thank you very much, Adam, for the presentation. At the moment, we are a bit tight for time, but we have answered all the questions that have appeared in the chat so far. You can submit further questions through the SEWBReC app as well, and we'll make sure we get back to each one of you. I left my email address in the chat as well, so please feel free to reach out to me directly or through the website if you want to get in touch or find more information about the LNP project. Thank you so much to all the speakers. Thanks for all of you for attending. Hope you found it really useful. Just to remind you that you can find lots more information on the conference SEWBReC platform if you need it. And please provide us with your feedback on the sessions via the rate session button on the SEWBReC agenda, which is on each session, on each of the information pages as well. Again, thank you all very much, and hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.